Many people develop eating disorders due to stress or trauma in their lives. And some believe this is due, at least in part, to a lack of nutrients in their diet, which would more effectively help their brains deal with that stress. This appears to be the case with my next guest, Meg Chatham, who had struggled with anorexia and eating disorders from her early teens. Join me as I talk to Meg about how she overcame her eating disorders and is now thriving on an animal-based diet on this week's episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. With me today is Meg Chatham. Meg, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Meg and I met at Paul Saladino's gathering in Costa Rica just a couple weeks ago. And I just felt strongly about having Meg on to talk, just to share her journey with us, her health journey and how she came to an animal-based diet in that search for better health, a more sustainable diet. So Meg, without trying to tell your story for you, because I just heard a little piece in some of the discussions, but you and I really haven't talked about your journey. So I'm looking forward to this. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you were? I mean, you've got quite a background. You've got Ivy League education. You're a marathon runner. So obviously you're a high achiever. Health has been a priority for you. I assume if you're a marathon runner, you're not afraid of a challenge. Yet you struggled with an eating disorder. So if you could kind of help us through that journey, just tell us kind of from your start, how you came out of that, because so many people really wants to get in, they're lost and have no way out.
Yeah, of course. And you're right that anorexia has one of the highest mortality rates of all psychiatric disorders out there. So I feel very grateful that I was able to escape and am in a stable place now. A little over a decade ago, that wasn't the case. My health journey began probably early in my teenage years, where I developed an eating disorder to help cope with some family trauma that we were going through. And it progressed relatively rapidly. I was able to skate through high school, and by skating through, and you'll notice this if you know a lot of people that are also going through anorexia, that we are a pretty high achieving bunch. So I checked all the boxes of being healthy, well equipped to deal with the real world. So nobody saw that there was a problem until I had gone off to college, and I went to Cornell University, and there they had a dormitory that was eco-focused. And with the term eco and sustainability comes with veganism and vegetarian way of eating. So I developed that lifestyle and was vegan for about a year. And, in hindsight, I can see all the signs, but in the moment, you're surrounded by other vegans and vegetarians. You're on this high. You feel this tribalism involved with this way of eating. And I had gotten a job to go off to Kerala, India. And in order to get a job as a student and get the necessary work visas to do that, I had to go get a physical and a couple other maybe vaccines and medications that I needed in order to travel there. Mm-hmm. And in that process, I was walking back from my physical, which, I included blood work and things like that, and got a phone call from the clinic saying, hey, if you feel lightheaded or dizzy, please call 911 immediately. We've put a security, alert out there that on your way to and from classes, that if they happen to see a person that has fallen down, to, let them know. We can med vac you out. And all this time I'm like, I feel fine. You're kind of blowing this out of proportion. But I go to my class and I commit to going back into the clinic after I get on my class. I get back into the clinic, and this doctor, is in there in the waiting room, and, takes me back and sits me down real calm, cool, and collected, and says, you're not going to come back here if you don't get into the hospital. And, you know, at first my rebellious nature is like, are you threatening me? What's going on here?
Right.
She's like, no, if you don't get into the hospital, you will probably die and you won't be back here in the fall. And, you know, we went back and forth, and like, I don't have cancer. And, you know, that was the first time I had heard that statistic that, you know, people with anorexia, you know, they don't have strong odds of surviving. And so, you know, that was kind of like my wake up call of, and admittedly, going back to that rebellious nature of myself of, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to get back here in the fall. So whatever it takes. And so I get into the hospital.
Let me ask you, you went to the hospital. So what did the doctor see on that blood work that was so alarming that they immediately knew there was a problem? Did she know that you had an eating disorder from what she was talking to you about? What she was referring to? Or just she just saw a chemical imbalance?
She both. So
okay.
It wasn't rocket science. You took one look at me and you're like, wow, she either has cancer or she has anorexia.
Okay.
And I know how sensitive other people can be towards me explaining numbers and putting things numerically on a scale, but I had a dangerously low BMI and appeared that way. And then a lot of the signs of like lanugo, which is a very fine protective layering of hair all on your body that keeps you warm. So there were physical signs. My blood work came back where my electrolytes were, I'll have to like dig back through my records to actually pull them up, but off so out of whack that it caused concern for that reason. But yeah, so I guess because my progression was at such a rate that was slow enough to be just dangerous enough to allow me to get to that place, my body had adapted to the point where I wasn't falling over, you know, and dying with those numbers the way they were. So I guess for added context, but yeah, so going back, I was in treatment, hospitalized, put on a feeding tube, and a very strict diet plan based upon the American Dietetics Association. So what they prescribe diabetes patients, and I think it's still their protocol for today, but and was committed to comply without any questions, just eat whatever they told me to eat, no matter how uncomfortable it made me feel. And 3 months of hospitalization, I was weight restored. And we can go into how that treatment looked if you'd like to, but otherwise I was able to restore my weight and kind of graduate from treatment, so to speak, with some tools that were very effective, like cognitive behavioral therapy type tools, art therapy, different kind of structures in place that could help me substitute more or healthier coping mechanisms to deal with stress and trauma resolution. So with that, I was able to go back to school in the fall and right back into my old routines of an old environment of less meat is better meat. And I was able to keep my weight up enough to graduate. And in the process of graduating from Cornell, I was able to through hike the Appalachian Trail once in 2015 and again in 2018. And in 2018 was kind of another revelation. I got back and was extremely depleted and was dealing with a lot of bone issues, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I started working with a woman named Diana Rogers and started producing her content. And it kind of dawned on me that, maybe meat isn't so bad after all. And dug deeper, started thinking a little bit more critically, started including more meat in my diet, and started feeling a little bit better. And slowly began the process of like rewiring my brain to really think of meat as food again. And I connected with another runner who is Michelle Hearn, registered dietitian. She was on your show before. And she was like, yeah, try this way of eating, go for it. And, she's so upbeat and positive. And I'm like, getting off a phone call with her, you feel like you've just like, mainlined caffeine. So
Right.
I was all pumped and excited, and I gave it a shot. So for 30 days, I tried strict carnivore against concerns of my treatment team. So my dietitian, my therapist, and my doctors, they were like, hell no, this is horrible. This is just another way of disordered eating. And you're loving it because it gives you this structured way of eating that you can eliminate other foods. But it's like, well, give me 30 days. If at the end of 30 days, I don't feel better, if my numbers are all out of whack again, we can circle back. Well, 30 days came and went. I felt amazing. I had fewer thoughts about food than I had ever had. So I wasn't ruminating about when my next meal was going to come from. I wasn't, meticulously tracking my calories or anymore. So my MyFitnessPal, record was out the window, thankfully. But it was that process, turned into 45 days, which turned into me, introducing running again. And feeling stronger and stronger. And I'm no longer, strict carnivore. As my mileage goes up, I varied my carbohydrate intake to accommodate for that. And so I think that brings us kind of up to date to today. And I mean, one thing that I forgot to mention once I started eating more meat was from age 17 towards age 28, I didn't have a period. And so I tried the 30 days of carnivore, 45 days of carnivore, kept my meat intake high as I reintroduced more carbohydrates. And within, I'd say, a total time period of 3.5 months, I got my period back, and it has been monthly like clockwork ever since.
Wow.
So, I'm still, not sure of what is the quote unquote right way to eat. And as far as like all the nuance that you can go in with diet, but one thing that I can't discount in my whole journey has been the essentialism of eating animal foods, and how crucial that has been and life-changing that has been in my way of eating in my life. And I was told, you're never going to recover from anorexia. It's going to be a demon that you always face. And right now I'm looking at the face of, anorexia and past pictures, and I'm like, I'm your demon, because, I feel like this way of eating has empowered me and strengthened me to the point that, I have the tools and the necessary strength to, truly lean on other coping mechanisms apart from, restricting my food intake.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now let me ask you a few questions, kind of going back a little bit. How long, when you were running while you were going through the vegan anorexic phase through college, correct?
Correct.
What kind of distance are we talking about?
Well, in college, it was nothing more than like 30, 40 miles per week. I got into distance hiking and burst after college, which was, I went from 0 hiking miles to 2,200 hiking miles. So there's a little bit of that type A personality showing up there. But once I got back from my first through hike in 2015, I started training more for the marathon, and ran my first marathon, qualified for Boston, won my first marathon, and then went off on my second through hike in 2018.
So you were still struggling at this point with diet a little bit. I mean, you'd come out of the treatment, right? The 3 months at this point, but you weren't really embracing a particular, you'd kind of gone back to more of the vegan style of, or vegetarian style of eating, or just okay.
I mean, any strict vegan would say, oh, you're plant-based more so. I mean, I would eat meat maybe once a week max on a good day.
Gotcha.
But otherwise it was predominantly vegetarian, vegan ways of eating.
Plus you're through hiking and training for marathons at this point.
Yeah. In between multiple stress fractures and, tendon issues that, I tried to recover through. And I guess did decently well, if not through sheer force alone. But I was still a nervous wreck. Like my anxiety was through the roof. I just would be all over the place. I'm a project manager for my full-time job, and just, I couldn't manage as much as I could. And now it's a blessing and a curse. I can do more, which my boss is super excited about, but drawing boundaries is another thing that isn't a way of eating, but is something that I now feel empowered to do because I'm more confident in other areas of my life.
Sure. Well, and you see the benefit. I mean, you see how it helps you do more. So when did you talk to Michelle and kind of try the carnivore? How long was that? It was like just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I tried carnivore in January of 2019.
Okay.
So yeah, I had started working with Diana, and then Michelle was real active in Diana's content, and I reached out to Michelle like, hey, you're a runner who eats meat. What the hell? This is, runners don't eat meat, especially like it seems like there's a huge vegan craze in the running community. Yeah. So I was just curious, and
Michelle's not just a runner. Michelle's not just a runner. She was like the 2019 female runner of the year for Runners Magazine. I mean, as far as Ultra Runner Magazine, I think it was. I mean, she was at the top of her game, and having come through some similar journeys that you have with eating and discomfort with her food and not sure how to manage that. She's come out on the other side of that with after having to stop running actually for a while, and she's come on the other side just stronger than ever with this diet. So very unheard of. I mean, just very, not what you think of. Diana, who I had on also right before Sacred Cow. So you're producing her content, like her podcast and her that kind of social media stuff. Yeah,
I wrote and produced all of her social media, all of her podcasts, and managed her blog and things like that, and helped her a lot with the book and film.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great film, great book. Well, fantastic. And so, wow, that's wild that through that, like your basically your job, you uncovered a new lifestyle for yourself.
Yeah, I have Diana and Michelle to thank a lot for, I guess, being the genesis for all of this. And, in Diana's circle, you stumble across the Sean Bakers, the Paul Saladinos, the Zane Griggs of the world. And,
I'm not in that circle. Thank you. But I'm not quite in that, in that circle, on that level. Yeah. But I do appreciate the name drop.
No, you are to me, but it's been great to, I guess, lean on women that are also in this space, because as a woman, we're told, eat salads, be as thin as possible, do as little as possible, get weighted on hand and foot. And that's just not my style, as you can tell throughout my history. Yeah. And, seeing Michelle as a woman thrive on this way of eating just really empowered me to give it a try myself. And, we still eat very differently, but, our meat level is relatively the same. And, she's more of an ultra runner, where I'm still in the marathon, distance, which we can get into the nuance of how, different they seem to be similar sports, but, nutritionally, they're very different. But yeah, it's just been an amazing kind of web of how things came to be.
Yeah. And you're not just, you won a marathon. Did I see sub 3 hour marathon?
That's my goal. So my PR is 2:49. So about a 6:28 minute mile per pace. Wow. I'm hoping to qualify for the Olympic trials within the next few years, and that qualifying time dropped from a 2:45 to a 2:37, which will be just under 6 minute mile per pace, 6 minutes per mile pace.
Wow.
So a little speedier.
So you want to qualify for the next Olympics to shave. So you got to shave off 22-ish minutes.
Yeah, that's not a goal. That's like a goal that's maybe 8 years out, if I can, really stay diligent. But
you're certainly at a competitive level. you're at a competitive level. Obviously, you're ranked, I would assume, at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we'll see where it goes. So hopefully with
gotcha.
the C word, of the last few years, things have kind of been jostled and turned up a bit. So we'll see how the next couple of years go, but hopefully I'll put my name on the map again.
That'd be awesome. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. That's fantastic. I mean, to not just survive but thrive at this, with this new lifestyle ahead of you. I mean, and be healthy with it, where like your blood work, I'm sure, is quite different now. You're obviously thriving in your life, business. And I mean, as I spoke to you there, as we mentioned, Paul, I mean, we met at this event. What does that mean to you? I mean, what's your takeaway from that? Or let me back up a little bit. What made you want to go to that? What drove you to kind of want to go to be around all these weirdos?
Yeah, well, as a fellow weirdo, I would say that alone is what drew me to it. Having an eating disordered background and being in my close circle of peers and family, they don't eat this way. And one crucial part of staying recovered is a community of people that are supportive, and not just, we all eat the same way, but are supportive of the thought that we can all eat together and share a conversation over a meal. And I haven't been able to have that in recent years with how I've been eating. So I saw it as an opportunity to have conversations over food that happens to be the way that I fuel myself to feel the best. And it was kind of a roll of the dice, so to speak. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to walk into a cult and we were all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya in a circle, which may or may not have happened at the last day.
May or may not have been biting into raw hearts and livers and things like that in the circle. But yeah.
But I mean, even that whole process was just tremendously supportive of, like, if you wanted to pass on the raw food, you could pass, and nobody judged you for it, which was incredibly interesting for me to observe with my background of, like, this is, you don't see that very often. Like, we are so, I hate to use the word religious, but we are religious about the way we eat. For and especially in my experience, I am praised when I'm eating a standard American diet and almost shamed when I eat anything different from an standard American diet. So that event kind of like broke those barriers for me of just like, let's have a group of people of all shapes, different sizes, different walks of life, different areas of the world come together and have awesome conversations over nutrient-dense food. And like the food aspect, I had gone into the event expecting the food aspect to be like 80-90% of the whole event, and it was the opposite. Like, it was maybe 20% of the event, and 80% was about the things that we were doing, the conversations we were having, the waterfalls we were jumping, and that was quite great to experience. Yeah,
it's not just about people who love meat, and that's what people kind of, the outside concept people think is, these bunch of meat eater people who live, or people looking for optimal health and optimal healthy lifestyle. That's an aspect of it that you have to address, and it's an important aspect. Your nutrition is an important aspect of it. And if there was something that was, optimal, the goal is optimal health, and so meat just happens to fall in there as being what has been called the enemy of optimal health. We found it to be the pinnacle of optimal healthy food. So it's not about meat; it's about optimal health. And so I think then all the conversations revolve around that, from sleep to movement, all types of movement. And I think just general lifestyle, like what do you find, what did you do for this? Or how did you come here? Or what did you go through to get to this point? Or what issues have you overcome, digestive issues, all sorts of health problems people have overcome there, who come there through this lifestyle. And it's just amazing to hear those stories. And that's the conversations. We're not talking about how do you like your meat. We're talking about what did you overcome through this, autoimmune diseases, I mean, all sorts of, I've heard so many stories, and it's amazing. It's amazing to hear people changing their health, and people, oh, it's so restrictive. Do you feel restricted in your diet?
No, I mean, in fact, like I'm able to think of so many other things apart from food now. It's like before I was like, okay, so what am I going to eat for breakfast? Should I eat breakfast? Oh my God, I'm going to die. Or like, what am I going to eat, for lunch after I eat breakfast? And then now I'm like, I'll eat, and I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do? And then I'll get into work, and, I'll just stay in whatever I'm doing next, as opposed to immediately thinking about when my next food is going to be. So I find it tremendously liberating.
Yeah. Now, do you incorporate? I know with the disordered eating background, maybe this is something you don't get into, but do you incorporate any type of intermittent fasting with your particular currently with your diet?
Mm-hmm. I've played around with it, so it is a slippery slope that I have to be strategic about. So when I'm in peak marathon training, I don't intermittent fast. But right now I'm kind of in off season. I'm just now getting back in season. So I would use intermittent fasting in off season when my mileage is low and when I'm really focusing on a strength block. And then, just as a tool periodically, but I don't even think about it in like a weight loss perspective or whatever perspective it may be. It's more of I know the benefits of fasting are, scientific and science-based, less so for, in particular to women more so than men. But in my experience, intermittent fasting can kind of contributed to that food liberation of being able to not ruminate about food, until, I eat my next nutrient dense meal. So I can go into a specific example if you'd like, but
no, I understand what you're saying. You mean it's just, it gives you that freedom to, like, I'm not worried about eating because this is my eating schedule today, and this is what I'm going to eat. And because you've adapted to this, because you burn fat efficiently, both as a marathoner and as someone who's practiced intermittent fasting and just this diet, your body can create energy from stored fat, and you're not hungry. Your hormones are metabolically flexible.
Yeah.
So I totally understand what you're saying. You just don't think about it, and it's something you do in a phase, whereas you're in a phase for running a lot of you don't need to be calorie deficient, so you shift out of it, and that's great to use it seasonally. I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense for an athlete, competitive athlete. I mean, and many people should look at their diets and their lifestyle that way, to think about how they're eating and shift with a seasonally. I mean, if they have changes like that especially in their activity level. So during the season, how many times do you have specific meal times, or do you have like, I eat 3 meals or I eat 4 meals, or is that kind of like is it more of a instinctive kind of, I eat when I'm hungry?
It's probably more instinctive now. And I'm just getting into a new training block, so maybe it could be valuable to explain sort of what I was doing in the previous strength training block. So I often would get up, have my toxic morning cup of coffee. Sorry, Paul Saladino, and then shoot some electrolytes. Go to my strength and conditioning coach, and he would run me through different strength training blocks, whatever it was for that particular session. And then after that session, because not most of them, 2 days a week are equal parts strength and equal parts conditioning. So on those conditioning days, I will have a meal immediately after, just to replenish everything. And then so that's a pretty substantial meal, which I'll have about noon, 1 o'clock. And then I'm not hungry until, 5 or 6 o'clock, when I'll have another big meal. And then on my lighter days, strength and conditioning, I would have light running and then go into a light strength training session. And on those days I finish earlier. So I'll have like 3 meals where I'll have a kind of a lighter-ish nutrient-dense breakfast. And then I'm more hungry midday. I find like the off days, and I think this is similar with other runners and other athletes, like your recovery days, you tend to be a little bit more hungrier than on your big hard push days. So my recovery days, I'm more hungrier and tend to have, those 3 meals a day, which is like a mid-morning breakfast, a mid-afternoon lunch, and then your typical evening meal.
Gotcha. Okay. So with regard to what you eat in addition to meat, most of your plate, I'm assuming, is some sort of animal-based protein, correct?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
So what else do you include with because it's not we know what foods are, we acknowledge what certain foods are more inflammatory than others. We know which foods are, but there's always there's that mix of each person's on their own journey. Each person is in their own lifestyle, what's best for them. In addition to that, what else do you eat in addition to meat?
Excuse me. So I'm playing around with that right now. Okay. And based upon a lot of what I experienced at the animal-based gathering, so I was shocked to see the amount of fruit that was available and consumed at that event. And it kind of was an interesting trigger for me to think about my relationship with fruit, of like, maybe this is something that a lever I could pull, especially as I'm entering in a more high intense training block. So I use strategic carb sources, which in the past have been like cooked and cooled potatoes. I make a triple fermented sourdough bread that is very delicious. I'll admit there's nothing like a taste of a sourdough bread slathered with butter. Oh, yeah. And then, squashes. So like summer squashes or butternut squashes, which my family grows. So we'll process them all in the summertime, and then I'll have them, the summer squashes in the summertime, and then I'll have those throughout the year with like some sort of omelet in the morning, and then as a side for any of my other proteins throughout the middle day or later part of the day. So in higher training blocks, historically, my carb sources have been those 3: squashes of all types, cooked and cooled potatoes of all types, and then sourdough bread. And now I'm going to try to experiment incorporating more fruits into my diet. I'm open-minded, but a little bit hesitant with so much fructose.
Yeah.
So we'll check back in, a couple months and see how that goes. But so I'll be eating less of those other 3 items and trying to incorporate more fruit. So, anything that I can get relatively-ish locally. I'm based in Texas, so I count Mexico as local.
Right.
So I guess I'm grateful that I can get avocados with a little bit more of a clear conscience than somebody up in Boston, Massachusetts getting avocados. So a lot of more pineapples, mangoes. In the summertime we'll have melons and things like that are a little bit more locally available. So.
Cantaloupe and watermelons, like that. A lot of that's grown down there. Cool. So you're playing with fruit because of the fructose, the concern being how it's processed through the liver, that kind of. Yeah.
Yes, and I mean just the as a marathoner, I'm not sure how geeked out I can get on this podcast, but
yeah, you can get geeky. Believe me.
I try to I guess in the process of running so quickly at such a long duration, like I would want different sugar sources that burn at a different rate. So I'm afraid that if I rely too heavily on fructose, that I'll burn through it faster than if I had a sugar source or a source that was a little bit more dynamic and that could burn at a slower rate. I am running too quickly to rely entirely on fat as fuel. And
Right.
so that's where the supplementation of, sugars intra-run would be advantageous. And I mean, that applies both mainly pre-workout and post-workout. I'm not as concerned about, but I'll have to play around with finding that right balance between the fructose from fruit and, maybe a resistant starch again from potatoes or fermented grains type things. But
so yeah, the resistant starch takes a little longer to break down. Obviously, like that's why you did the cooked and then cooled potato makes a resistant starch. The bread, the fermented grain, obviously a little more resistant than just fruit, which you break down pretty quickly. It's usually about half fructose, half glucose, but still it's not it breaks down faster than say a cooled potato with resistant starch fibers. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, strategically pairing those, if I were to bring those back in, making sure that I don't pair them with my red meat, so it interrupts iron absorption or anything like that. But so I'm not
pairing the potatoes, you mean?
The grains. So if I were to add back in fermented grains, like I mean, the only fermented grains that I would consume would be or have historically consumed lately, since eating this way, has been the fermented sourdough or a really multiple day soaked oat, like whole oat. And sometimes that phytic acid doesn't have a chance to break down, which can affect the absorption of iron. And as a female, I'm concerned about keeping my iron levels up.
For sure, especially with that kind of stress that you're going under with the training. You need you separate those digestive times to avoid any kind of issues. Yeah, that makes complete sense. That's amazing. That's great that you've kind of found that little mix for you, but you're still testing, like you're still tinkering, which is where we have to stay, I think.
Yeah, I think that's healthy. Like I honestly feel like if I were too rigid in this way of eating, then maybe there would be some substance behind people saying this way of eating is disordered. But I guess in my instance, so by tinkering and kind of finding that right titration of different proteins, fats, carbohydrate sources that works for me and my goals and my current stress levels has kept me grounded. And I don't know, it's working for me and has for the last 3 years. So I'm hoping that it continues to work for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's great. So back to the community. I mean, you feel like some benefit of being part of this community. I understand what you mean. The first time I went to one in July, I didn't realize how much the community would mean to me. I didn't realize. I thought, this would be fun. I'm in Costa Rica. I've always romanticized about Costa Rica. I'd only been one other time, and you got the surfing, you got the waterfall, the hiking is beautiful, the food. The best part was the community, was talking to everybody, connecting with everybody. That was my biggest takeaway as the benefit of this trip. And I don't know, that just, it's about being around other people like-minded who are looking for optimal health, and being able to have those conversations that starts on another level than trying to just having to explain how you start. And you're staying down here like, this is how I explain, simplified, why I eat this way, what I'm eating. It's a different level because you're already past that point, and you're here and you're like, well, what do you do? Like I said, sleep. How are you moving? What are you doing for mobility? And then I find other ways to be inspired and challenge myself from the ways other people have optimized something that I haven't quite optimized on their level. So it helps. There's like an exchange of inspiration, information, to improve, because we're, like I said, we always should be tinkering. We should be trying to improve our lifestyle. It's like a meeting of the minds of like-minded people, just feeding each other on a personal level. And I hope you found that was your experience there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first day, admittedly, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start talking about something and they're going to think I'm a quack. And, it was not, it was not. And I mean, probably some onlooker would be like, well, it's because you're all quacks, that's why you're getting along so well. But if that's what it is, I want to be a part of it, because I've never felt so welcomed, and just the lack of judgment in a lot of those circles was really something that I didn't know I needed, or missed from my through hiking experiences.
Those were my words exactly. I didn't know I needed it.
Yeah.
When I came back, I didn't realize I needed it until I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Because of that, I didn't realize I was missing it in my life. And you're coming out of COVID, where we've all been separated anyway, everything's online. But even in your daily life, as we get back to normal, those people still aren't there. Like, I don't know anybody around me that eats this way. I know there are people in Austin. I know there's people in Florida, people around the country, but I don't know anybody in my circles, and I'm guessing you might have a few down there, but to be in a group where like that's kind of the majority of the people there who are already been implementing this. Some are seekers, some are figuring it out, some are new to it, but mostly it's people who have been implementing a search and a lifestyle of optimal health for a number of years. That's why they're there. And it's refreshing. It's like there's a level of stress that comes down, and openness that you don't have to have your guard up. You don't have to think about how to over explain things. Like you said, you're around all these, we're all a bunch of unicorns. We're all a bunch of quacks, weirdos, whatever you want to call us. Not judging each other, but sharing and being open and kind of exchanging ideas. And then you just take from it what you want to play with, what you want to explore with, what you're doing, with the fruit. It's refreshing. It's kind of like a little piece of inspiration to kind of keep you going. And your boyfriend or fiance, Dustin?
Yeah, my boyfriend, Dustin.
Boyfriend came with you, which is great that you're in a relationship with someone who's like-minded, I assume, like in that regard. So that's great that you guys could share that together, because that's also not always the case with a lot of people that come. Like, their household or their significant other doesn't always feel the same or eat the same, or isn't even on the same page in some cases. Everyone's on a different journey and different levels of incorporation, but to have that like-mindedness and be able to come there, I would assume that's just a lot more fulfilling,
Yeah. And again, he's a huge part of why I feel like I've been able to be successful with this lifestyle. It's like, when you're eating differently as somebody with an eating disorder, it is very challenging to eat in a way that your partner or who you're around the most doesn't agree with. And so I've been very grateful that he has been supportive throughout all of this, and even, challenged me to be like, okay, your mileage is going up. You need to eat more protein to help with that recovery, or just eating more in general, of just making sure that, I'm walking the talk, or running the talk, maybe.
Right. Yeah. You have the space to grow into it and have the encouragement. That's amazing. That's awesome. Now, I did see a post recently. You make your own skincare, which you said you've been doing maybe for a while, and it's not just it's like you're making like an animal base, like you're using, looks like tallow, and was there some olive oil or something like that?
There was, which I'm tinkering with, but that whole thing started in college. So it was I had drugged my boyfriend into a business plan course, and part of that course was to start a business. And I chose soap making. I'd watched Fight Club and figured I watched Fight Club. I'm an expert. I can do this. And back then, I started with plant-based, and so over time, I began to source out. I was like, what do I have that's local? And palm oil isn't local. Avocado oil isn't local. And at that point, we were still living in Ithaca, New York, and it was like, okay, well, I have cows. Cows are local. What can I do with cows? And I have bees. Bees are local. And there were a few olive producers. So I just accumulated those ingredients and said, what can I make with this? And, started just making my own sort of skincare. We didn't really take it too seriously. We went around to different craft fairs and things across the country just to get travel out of our system while living out of VW Westphalia Vanagon. But I didn't realize until just talking with you earlier that there's an actual, other people that are seeking this sort of skincare. But I make my own skin cream, the Fountain of Youth, and lip balm and soap.
Awesome. So tallow is the basis of most of and beeswax. I'm assuming you mentioned bees, so beeswax for the lip balm.
For the lip balm. And I mean, I have made like different callus type balms for hands and feet that do have some beeswax and tallow and a little bit of olive oil to help it spread. But then my face and the rest of my body, I just use tallow with a little bit of olive oil to, add to that spreadability. But I'm still tinkering with that olive oil, even though it's a Texas-based olive oil. Like, I know that I haven't done the research and I'm not educated to know if that is the best ingredient that I could have to complement the tallow. So it's a work in progress.
Gotcha. That's understandable. But yeah, you need something to help keep it. You have to make it break down a little bit. It's solid at most room temperatures. I get it. To make it smooth on without having to like being gritty and stuff. Yeah, I understand. Right. I'll use a little tallow myself, just like, especially if I got a little too much sun and all at once for being March, in Costa Rica, all those hours out there, and I was putting it on the skin that started to peel up a little bit, but I'll use it on my face. I mean, almost daily, several times a week. After shaving and all that kind of stuff, and it feels great. It goes on. Well, now my family kind of teases me a little bit about. I mean, my son thinks I smell like grass. My wife said I smell like a meat stick, and which sounds kind of manly at first, but I think she means like a Slim Jim from the gas station. So, which is not complimentary. But it's
try being a woman that smells like a meat stick all the time.
Oh my gosh. Well, see, there you go. That's why you need the both partners on the same page. But there might be something to add. Like I talked to someone who's adding like a lavender oil or some sort of like essential oil that adds a little better scent to it, but it wouldn't be enough to be like a toxic issue. It'd be sort of complementary to skin, but just enough like for the smoothability and the scent so you don't walk around smelling like a Slim Jim.
I've played around with both lavender and cedarwood. And again, I'm not educated to know just how much endocrine disruption is going on with adding those two essential oils. But so again, check back in a few months. Maybe I'll have done that research to have come to a conclusion. But yeah, I'm every dog's best friend though, so it's really nice to go.
That explains it. I have every pet. I go into homes for training, and their dogs are like all over me. Like it's like, hey, he smells fun. I'm thinking they're just smelling my dog, my kids. But no, it's the meat stick smell. That's
you're walking meat stick.
I'm a walking meat. Oh boy. Well,
tagline.
You know what? It feels good. It's like goes on, soaks in smooth. There's no weird residual, and I don't feel like I'm putting chemicals in my body. You know what I mean? And so
I had originally thought, I was like, if I put this on my face, I'm going to feel like I'm suffocating, especially in the dead heat of summer. In Northeast Texas, it's really hot and humid, so you have this suffocating air in general. So I had expected that the tallow on my face would also feel suffocating, but it's not. It just goes into the skin barrier, and you can't even feel it anymore.
Right, it does go in the skin barrier. Even humid. Yeah, it's humid here in Nashville too in the summer. Yeah, and not quite like Texas, but we're not far behind.
Close.
Yeah, and it does. You think, it's going to be this heavy, thick thing with the humidity. It's got to sit on there like some creams, and it actually absorbs very well. And you're not like wiping it off all day with fat. It goes in. In just a matter of a minute. So it's amazing. So I more power to you if you figure that out. I do think there's a market out there of us weirdos who don't want the chemicals. We want them animal based, skincare, just like we want animal-based food, because the skin's an organ and you're
Yeah.
absorbing it and it's going into your system. And as you mentioned, there's too many products out there that are endocrine disruptors, that, which is what we're trying to avoid, obviously, with our lifestyle. So that's, hey, if you figure it out, let me know.
Well, in the meantime, anybody that wants to try what I slather on myself, just reach out, DM me, I'll send you some. So you can be my guinea pigs.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny, you worked with Diana Rogers and then Michelle, who are, like, I mean, pillars in the animal-based, community. Really outspoken, well-educated nutritionists, both of them RDs, registered dietitians, very critical of the education that they receive to get that RD, because it is so corporate driven. It's so money driven by corporate processed food companies, and that's why we love them, because they're not afraid to speak out. But I mean, you're a brand strategist, so you are working with them to help them get this message out. You want to tell us a little bit about what you do, or what your service? I mean, I think this is your own business, correct?
Yes, it's my little side hustle that isn't so little anymore. But I started working with Diana, and I've always had a knack for, this sounds horrible, but the only way I can describe it is social engineering. So figuring out what somebody, an advocate like Diana Rogers, is saying, and trying to take what she's saying and present it in a way that people understand, that people gravitate towards and cling to. And I had the tremendous opportunity to do that from 2018 to just recently. I resigned in January, and in that time we were able to crowdfund a bunch of money for the film and finish up the book, Sacred Cow. And I grew her audience from 20,000 to 120,000 followers, and email lists the same way, and similar examples. We were able to launch her new initiative, Global Food Justice Alliance, which is advocating for animal foods for women and children, especially in third world countries, which is extremely important. So I feel very honored to play a small part in helping them get that message out. And so yeah, I'd like to say that Diana, she created the map, and I just kind of helped to put her on the map. And Michelle, similarly, I helped her produce her book and gave her some pointers to help her kind of get her social media up and off the ground. So both of those women are great forces in this industry and field, and I hope them the best as they continue forward.
Mm-hmm. So you're continuing to do this, obviously not just in the animal-based community, but you're helping entrepreneurs, like small business people, I assume, with their brand strategy, social media, podcast production, that kind of thing.
Yep. I've been working with James Connolly consistently for the last couple of years, and then different brands will reach out to me, like Vermont Salumi is one of my clients, and help them kind of demystify literally how the sausage is made to their audience in Vermont, and helping them realize that sometimes our business goals are our business audience is not our business consumers. So for them, it was helping them get into more lean into the B2B side of their business, so business to business, so getting their product and in Whole Foods was a big monumental effort, while stepping back a little bit more from the direct to consumer sales. So they've been able to take off quite well over the last couple of years too. So it's been fun. It's a little hobby of mine. I love helping people out, and I think it's important that these advocates get their message out, and I'm happy to play a part, however small part that is in that process.
That's awesome. So your website for that is just megchatham.com. I'll link to that. And I know you're in Instagram, if people want to connect with you, it's meg.chatham, CHATHAM.
Yeah.
So that's great. I mean, that you're doing that, because sometimes people have a message and they have a passion, but they're not really good at the business side and the social media side. It's constantly changing. The algorithms change, and they need help. They need help to get that on that side of it. get that out. They know their business, but they don't know how to spread the word, and everyone needs help with that when you're trying to do everything. It's just you're spread thin.
Yeah, and not everybody wants to shake their tail feathers in front of a camera. So finding the platforms that are more maybe a science based as opposed to a dance rhythmically challenged person wouldn't succeed on.
Yeah, we're not all meant for TikTok, and
so I try to help people concentrate their efforts where they'll get the most bang for their buck.
Awesome. That's much needed. Good thing. Glad you're on our side. On the animal-based side. There's enough on the other side. There's enough on the opposing view to help them that no, this side of optimal health needs some help with our marketing and our messaging and getting more people to open their eyes and just listen, just pay attention, just try it, just stick your toe in the water and see what kind of results you get. And that part of that is just getting a message out there that is, like you said with Diana, is more palatable to a broader audience than the people who already bought into her. You've got to continue to reach beyond your current audience
and differentiating yourself from the noise. So I mean, there's so much garbage being put out on the internet, and what sets you apart is what you can lean into, and people want to hear it. People need to hear it. So if I can say to anybody that has a message to get out, just start tinkering and get it out there, and the audience will grow. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Meg, thank you so much. It's been great. We covered a lot of stuff here, but I am so glad we connected in Costa Rica, that you're able to come on here and share your journey. I mean, that's again important for people to hear that usually people who are in that situation, they're dealing with a stress. They're dealing with a stressor, but they're also, like you said, many times overachievers. They want health. They're many times health is a part of that. It's in their mindset, but it's not. They're not achieving it. Did I say that correctly? I mean, you were thinking, your activity level, what you were doing, everything was, when you were moving in a direction you were hope was healthy, but it was a matter of just changing your perspective and really seeing a better solution. But in front of you, I mean, really, you had some doors open to you that were just, I mean, working with Diana, that's you couldn't have orchestrated that better. Nobody could have.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? You couldn't. In other words, no one would have. The people you were going to for help would not have opened that door for you. The people were not there. That's not the solution they were giving you. Was not the solution.
No, it was just eat more vegetables or meditate more or journal more, and those are all valid things. But until I was able to provide my brain the foods and the nutrients to actually take those tools and run with them, did I ever feel good and feel like those auxiliary tools were effective.
Awesome. Yeah. So you need the nutrients. You need the nutrients.
And going back to Diana, she definitely helped me realize that meat is food, and it's okay to eat, and it's often one of the healthiest, most sustainable, and most ethical things to eat.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, I'm going to link to your website as well as your Instagram accounts. People can reach out to you and connect if they want more information and some skincare. But thank you again. I'm looking forward to sharing this with everybody, and let's stay in touch, because I think these gatherings, this community is important. And I think that's for those of us who are seeking optimal health. I think there's a reason we're drawn to them. That's just vital. It's missing in many people's lives, and that's a sense of community and belonging and with like-minded people. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story.
I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for all you did to make the gathering possible. Without you, we would have been a bunch of lost cats. So you helped us get to where we needed to go and make the most of it. So I appreciate you too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was fun. I enjoyed getting the opportunity to really serve the community that I get so much from. You know what I mean? It meant a lot to me to get to serve everybody like that. And I'm glad it went off as well as it did. No one was more surprised than me that it actually, that we stayed on schedule and that things worked. So I'm not kidding. That was like a very fluid situation. And I was, I appreciate everyone's patience with me and probably some of my facial expressions. So
it was great.
Thanks so much. Well, have a great week, and I look forward to staying in touch.